We made this.
Greetings, Federation delegates from the United Earth Protectorate. My name is Mike Slamer, and you are back in the ready room of We Are Starfleet, a podcast dedicated to Star Trek Discovery on the We Made This network of podcasts. This is a special episode to me, as it has been 1 year since the release of this pod. Over these past 12 or so months, We Are Starfleet has developed a tremendous following of listeners, and I am so grateful to each and every one of you for tuning in. The Star Trek fanbase is a brilliant and authentic community of wonderful people. I've had some wonderful guests over the year, including cast members of the show, fellow We Made This Network members, and of course my co-host, who I couldn't do this without, Ian Buckley. No one exists in a vacuum, and this podcast wouldn't exist without these brilliant people joining me. And finally, a major thank you to my wife and partner Cipriana for her ongoing support. If you'd like to help support this podcast, please consider a donation to my coffee fund at www.buymeacoffee.com/Mike Slamer. The link is also in the episode description. You can also sign up to our Patreon page. But also, just subscribing and following the show is a beautiful show of support. So, to celebrate the 1 year anniversary, I've got a great episode lined up for you guys, and I really hope you enjoy. So I am thrilled today to welcome to We Are Starfleet the author of the new Star Trek Discovery novel, Wonderlands, multiple award-winning New York Times bestselling author, brilliant academic, and the curator of a very funny Twitter feed that you have, Dr. Una McCormack. Hi.
Hi, thank you very much for having me. I'm glad someone enjoys the Twitter feed. I think it's sweary nonsense, but, you know, there you go.
I mean, that's what life is. It's just sweary nonsense, but I love it.
Pretty much, yeah. More of it does no harm, I guess.
I love it when you're doing your DS9 watching and you'll post like a screen cap or just like an episode blurb and you'll just be like, oh, look at Garrick. You know, he looks so cute in this.
Or I'm watching an episode he's not in and I wonder what Garrick's doing right now.
Where's
maybe
he
I should text him and see what he's doing.
Okay,
text him, see if he's watching this. Yeah.
So are you guys like texting buddies? Do you have a group chat going?
Pretty much, yeah. It's a bit alarming, particularly when I accidentally get CC'd on the Obsidian Order chat. But
oh my gosh, I could only imagine.
The assassination list, yeah, well, that's a good one.
Oh gosh. So Una, I'm sure that most listeners here tuning in may already know, but for those of us out there who don't, what's your superhero origin story? Oh,
right, okay. I got bitten by a Cardassian at an impressionable age, I think. As in, how did I break into writing that story? Or sure. Yeah, I guess. Well, you know, I was a science fiction fan, particularly television science fiction fan from really quite a young age. In Britain, it's Doctor Who usually for somebody my age rather than Star Trek. It's kind of tricky to watch Star Trek in Britain. Wasn't syndicated, so I didn't see it so much. But I was just at the right age when Next Gen arrived. So I was probably about 16 or 17, and that's a great age to be watching Next Gen because, you know, you go, my God, this is incredible. I've never thought about the androids. They're sentient. What does that mean for laws and all sorts of things? So it's brilliant for that kind of age. And so I really, really like Next Gen and got into the books around about the same time. And then kind of like DS9, it kind of hit when I was at college. But again, it wasn't easy. You had to kind of track down video cassettes. It was quite a laborious thing to sort of be a Star Trek fan in the UK. So I kind of dipped away from that. And then the great, I don't know if anyone remembers these, the great Deep Space Nine Babylon 5 wars of the early internet, which were, our Twitter wars were nothing compared to that. I was absolutely a Babylon 5 fan. I absolutely adored it. Wouldn't have dreamt of watching Deep Space Nine. And then a friend lent me his videotapes and he said, no, really, I've been at you for years to watch this. Here's a story called Way of the Warrior. Oh, look, it's got Klingons on the front. Oh, I'm going to hate this. And about 5 minutes in, I thought it was absolutely brilliant. Because about 5 minutes in, Garrett gets punched. And that... and that's the moment where I got bitten by Cardassians. So from then on, I loved Deep Space Nine. I absolutely consumed it. I was buying the tapes and giving them back to him by the end. And then I started writing fan fiction almost immediately that I finished watching it. And then I think this is quite a well-known story. Out of the blue, I got an email from the editor. Marco Palmieri was editing the Star Trek books at the time. And he emailed and said, my stories have been recommended. And would I like to pitch to the DS9 range? And I said, you're absolutely right, I would. I mean, fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah, so I tell this story at conventions a lot, and Jim Swallow, who's the other British Star Trek writer, he sort of, at this point, he leans forward, he goes, the most important thing you have to know is that this never happens, okay? You don't get emailed out of the blue and invited to write Star Trek books, unless you're her. So, but, yeah, that doesn't happen very often, I think. People are kind of knocking at the doors to get in, but stars just aligned, and I got invited and haven't really looked back, so... There we go. That's the origin story.
Why would you want to look back? That's a dream right there.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's amazing.
Get to sit at home in front of my computer making up Star Trek stories. It's brilliant.
Right? Yeah. Does CBS have you like on speed dial now? Because it feels like every year there's a new novel coming out with your name attached to it.
Yeah, I think I need to slow down a bit. I probably need to have a little rest. I've written 2 books this year already, so we're not quite halfway through. We just had the solstice, haven't we? So
oh yes,
yeah.
yes.
But I just like writing, and I enjoy it, and I can do it pretty quickly and to a decent enough standard, and they seem to like it, so they come back to me, which is great for as long as it lasts.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And of course, we are here today to discuss your latest tie-in novel to Star Trek Discovery, Wonderlands, which tells the story of Commander Michael Burnham's lost year taking place between arriving in the 32nd century and then linking up with the Discovery. So, folks listening, we are quite likely to get into a little bit of spoiler discussion depending on how the conversation goes. So for those of you keen on giving the book a read, fair warning ahead. Una, in writing this story, the entire time reading it, I kept thinking to myself, I know how Burnham's story ends. And of course, one of the most brilliant things about reading these kinds of novels is filling in those gaps. What's that creative process like, filling in these areas where you know where it begins and how it ends?
Yeah, it's. I mean, you remember I started as a fan fiction writer. This is absolutely meat and it's exactly what a fan fiction writer does. They take these sort of moments that are absent and absolutely fill them up as much as they can. So it's sort of what my training wheels have been doing on. I still write a lot of Tolkien-based fan fiction, so I still, I'm still doing that. I've filled every second of the Houses of Healing in Lord of the Rings.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty much. So it's sort of what I'm used to doing. And I think what you have to do is obviously and this happens with any Star Trek book. You're not going to be killing off characters. You're not going to be doing stuff that isn't going to be happening on screen. So you have to find the meaning in the story in the events that you're telling. It covers about a year, which is a long period of time in somebody's life, and we see this difference in Michael. I mean, we see a very different Michael when Discovery finds her. So it was up to me to sort of put those beats in and show people how she got from plunging to the ground in the Red Angel suit to this very different, almost courier figure. Her hair's gone much longer. Her style is much more relaxed. She's someone who's settled into this very different role. And how would that happen? Michael's very, even though she's got this background as, a mutineer, quite buttoned up, quite straight-laced, very Vulcan. So how do we go from that to this very, very different figure? And that's really the story that I tried to plot. We had to kind of dance around the book story a little bit because obviously that was going to reach its kind of resolution on screen. So we had to kind of, well, I love writing sort of UST, so that was no problem really. And they bounce off each other extremely well. So whenever they're together, they're just filling pages, and people have really enjoyed that. I think they love the chemistry between the two characters, and the actors obviously are fantastic. It's you just have to trust that the story there. The book sort of visits lots of different. The other thing I did was create a whole new bunch of different characters. And also expand the backstory on people like Sahil. So you see a lot more of their life and times, his life and times. So I guess you've just got to, you can't do much, you can't do anything that what's going to change on screen. So you've got to find the story elsewhere. And I thought of it like a sort of little season in its own right. It's like you're getting 3.1 or something, or you're getting, the little season in between, and that really helped sort of thinking about it, and just expand with different characters and different worlds, and let us see a little bit of this environment that they've created. So that's the trick.
Wow. The story with Booker and Burnham on screen is great, and the way you put it, dancing around that relationship in the book, because obviously it comes before what we see on screen, was quite. It's such a tease. Like, I kept thinking, like, oh, come on, Book, my man, just kiss her already. Just
kiss the girl.
Just
come on, Michael, just grab him.
Go.
The cat won't mind.
Yeah, exactly. Like, Grudge is all there for it. Speaking of Grudge, I kept waiting for something to happen with Grudge. So, do you have a theory? Do you know? Can you say anything? What's going on with Grudge? What's the deal? Everyone wants to know.
What's the deal? All I know about Grudge is that it's a gorgeous cat. So
sometimes a cat is just a cat, right?
Yeah. And sometimes it's a bit more Captain Marvel, but it's just a giant cat. It's just a queen of cats. It's an empress of cats. Very beautiful cat.
It's amazing. It's amazing. It's almost like Grudge has become a little bit of a mascot for the series now, and.
Don't let her hear you say that. I mean, she's the lead as far as Grudge is concerned.
Were there any themes or topics in Wonderlands that you really wanted to cover, or that you were asked to include, that really stuck with you while writing?
Well, the chief thing to me seemed to be about Michael's loneliness. So that was the one that I really wanted to get into, and that's there in the title. It's she's Alice in Wonderland. She's lost. It's bewildering. Everything has changed. Things that should be small have gone big. Things that are big have gone small. Everything's the wrong shape. There's she doesn't understand the first thing about it. She doesn't understand the tech. She doesn't understand the society. So her loneliness and her attempt to sort of reach out and make connections is at the heart of it. But one theme that kind of emerged in writing was to do with aging and what happens to heroes when they can't run around so quickly anymore. Yeah. So there are a lot of people in the book who are thinking about what's going to happen now they're slowing down, or what's going to happen with this next stage in their life, which was all absolutely fine. Before the Federation collapsed, everybody would be comfy and comfortable and wealthy and so on, but not in this new society, this quite cutthroat world. So that was a theme that kind of emerged in writing, and I think I'm pleased with that. I think it turned out quite well.
The one of the new characters, to no surprise, knowing your fondness for Cardassians, Padan, she's a courier. She's growing older, and she's thinking about her own retirement. What's going to come next? What comes next? What comes next? I can't constantly be on the run, doing all this great good for people who don't want me to do good for them. It was really, I connected with that feeling here in present day as we go through this strange socio-political economic era of our late stage capitalist environment where we're constantly working. You have to have a side hustle. You have to have a gig. You know, you got to do something that you enjoy. And how much time can you really set aside for yourself in all of that? So Padan really feels like one of us in that way, in a way that a Federation Starfleet officer from the 22nd, 23rd century wouldn't necessarily feel. So connecting that and having Burnham make this recognition of, oh, you know, I'm surrounded by boxes and crates, and here's my uniform folded up in the corner. Having that connection and having Burnham realize what's going to happen if I have to work constantly and I'm losing sleep and I can't make my personal logs, I can't make my supplementaries, and where do I go from here? That theme really drove home. I can't tell you how much I just had to, like, I put the book down and I'm like, I need to take a break because yes, I feel that so personally. She's Generation X, Padan, isn't she? She's sort of Generation X is tired. Generation X has got to its late 40s and still hasn't got the mortgage. Generation or is, you know, it's Generation X is looking after elderly parents and small kids. So there's a great very famous blog post about this. So that's Padan. I think, you know, everything is, she's been running to catch up, and then just when she's starting to slow down and think, I need to end this, she loses everything. And I think everything. It just goes. It just, you know, the .com boom or whatever, she loses the house, all of this. And it's all gone. And yes, you're absolutely right that Michael is looking at this and thinking, well, this is actually what the courier life is like. And then on the other hand, you've got sort of Book's friends who turn out to have this kind of, they've got this world that they're keeping secret, which is where their mums live. But their mums have been couriers as well. But it's just that, you know, they've reached this time in their life 20 years ago and have, you know, kind of retired. And because you've got to come from somewhere and go somewhere. So what I wanted to do with the whole book was kind of subvert the action novel and say, well, you know, action heroes have mums, and action heroes were 7-year-olds and these sorts of things, and there've got to be spaces in the world if the world is going to be real for these people to exist. So that was what was going on there. The moment I'm trying to dance around just in case folks who aren't reading quite yet, but there's a moment where you say they meet their families, they meet their moms, and they have a moment to themselves. I envision this great, beautiful, vast winery, and they're just this beautiful, small, like, oasis of family, of love, of connection. And in that is what I really feel embodies the Star Trek ideal, that togetherness, that connectedness. We're working for a common good, and the common good is here. It's us together now. It was a brilliant way to introduce Michael to the courier lifestyle and show her that it's not just running and gunning and being a moralistic pirate, if you will.
Exactly that. And we see a glimpse of this with Book. We see that he's got, it's there on screen that he's got deeper connections. But the family situation is complicated. But we know that he cares about the transworms. We know that there are, it's not as straightforward as just being a space pirate. There's more going on there. So I kind of extrapolated from that. It's really interesting how people say they envisage it. You've got a winery in mind. I had a kind of Cotswolds village. So I think we're all putting in our kind of ideal pastoral setting to that, which is great. I'm terrible at writing descriptions, so I kind of rely on people to put the pictures there themselves. So that's lovely. Picturing a winery there, that's gorgeous. Chateau Picard, La Bar.
I mean, maybe not as filled out and robust, but I kept picturing olives and the cheese plate, and the salami, the prosciutto is there, and you find a cracker, you spread a little olive top and
they're around the table. It's quite convivial. It is quite French, isn't it?
It's quite nice. And then you have Sahil through all of this. And we don't get a lot of Sahil on screen, but I gotta say, even the most diehard critics of Discovery have fallen in love with Sahil.
Quite right.
So,
yeah.
So, were you given a template at all, or was it effectively a canvas that you got to fill in yourself?
It was pretty much a canvas. I think we talked a little about who this guy might be, and what he might have been doing there, what sort of age we thought he was, for example. But then he's so briefly present, and yet so, God, the actor's fantastic. It's such a lived part. Just incredible. It's got all this presence and poignancy and nostalgia, and the world we've lost. It's all there. That opening scene just sells the whole season. It's a wonderful, one of the best performances in Star Trek, really. I don't say that lightly. And then I just sort of had to think about who this man might be. I thought it would be, we're kind of given him as just this sort of lonely figure, existing by himself. But again, I suppose another one of the themes of the book is the connections that we do have. So I thought it'd be more interesting to make this space station not empty, but inhabited. There'll be people he'll be having conversations with. I think he's connected to 2 starships, doesn't he? He can sort of keep in touch with them. So maybe they're coming to the base, other ships will be coming through. We get a sense that he knows books, or certainly knows the couriers. So from there, you start to build that little world of what that space station might be. And then what world he must have come from. What was the Federation planet, and what was the story there? And that gave me, I think, what the book needed. We had all the story with Michael, but it also needed the story of the burn. And I was able to tell that through it's his grandmother, isn't it? It's her logs.
Yeah.
So that was a great addition to the book. That was because not only does writing logs kind of fill up pages, but they're also a great way of I think people would want to experience the burn at first hand.
Yeah.
And that's what those logs did, I think. Yeah.
I love that narrative style of providing the exposition through the journal or the diary. And it's a character that you can never talk to, never speak to, never interact with in any way. You can only get their perspective, and you can only fill in what might have been missing from that. Yeah. Really brilliant, touching way. Yeah.
And Michael can never reach her. That's the world that's gone. So I was writing this. I think we'd pretty much just gone into lockdown. We went into lockdown at the end of March, and then I think I was sort of writing this May, June. So we were still locked down in the UK. So I think there's a lot of that sense of we're not going out anywhere. We don't know what will be open. Which of our favourite shops and cafes and things will be gone by the time we get back out again. So there's a lot of that going in there. But I think on a vaster scale, they're losing so much more. They're losing their entire world, I think. So that's a little bit of what's going in there.
Brilliant segue into this next question then. I'm not the first person to notice that in both Star Trek Discovery and the Marvel film Endgame, they both feature this time skip. And that has been very analogous to our own pandemic world that we live in currently with this lost time. And we've lost approximately a year. Some people have lost much more than that, and some people have lost virtually nothing. Clearly, the pandemic has impacted the themes when you were writing this book, because I could feel some of that isolation, some of that loneliness, and I felt almost primed while reading this book that the pandemic kind of prepared me for that a little bit. So I felt that isolation. Was there anything specific from the pandemic that you incorporated into those themes that we should be feeling?
Oh, I think that loneliness. So Michael just feeling that she's completely by herself. Her ship is quite small, so we all went down to the size of our houses. For some people that was quite big. For others, it was a 2-bedroom apartment, or maybe some people had a country mansion and acres of land. There's probably some people had a great time, but others were in much tighter spaces and very isolated, very lonely. So that in particular, I think, was there. But also, I think, like I was just saying, I think my partner and I sort of twigged fairly on. We worked out pretty early on that this was, this wasn't going to be over by June. Yeah, we were looking at least a year, if not 2. So quite early on, we were kind of going, oh my God, this is, the world is going to be completely different when we come out on the other side. I think part of that goes into how Michael is feeling. Except Michael is never going to get it back. I mean, here in the UK, we've started doing things again that are, it's almost like it was in March 2020. But as you say, for other people, that won't be the case. And it was that I wanted to tap into, that, Michael is never going back to that world, as far as we know. That's how she feels. She might not even see her friends again, which is, most of us were just going, we'll see friends again one day. And she's saying that to herself as well. But doesn't entirely believe it, I think.
Yeah. Michael's still living in March 2020, while the rest of us may be here now. Yeah.
It was weird to have been commissioned to do this book, and then when I sat down to write it, somehow I have found myself in an analogous situation.
Wow.
Okay, pass on that one next time. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. So this is a question that AJ Black had asked, that he wanted me to ask for you. How much overlap did you have with the writing team for seasons 3 and 4 when creating the backstory for Burnham between season 2 and 3?
Oh, so what we do is quite straightforward. I work quite closely with Kirsten Beyer, who oversees, obviously, co-creator of Picard and has written for all of these shows, and also oversees the writers' room's interest in the tie-in novels. Now, of course, Kirsten was a Voyager, wrote many of the books in the Voyager relaunch, so she really understands how the books can work with the show. So I sort of work with her, and we go, okay, what would be a great story to tell here? I sign these NDAs, so that I'm not allowed to breathe a word about anything, but I'm given access to scripts in advance. So I mean, you've all seen Discovery season 3 now, but I was kind of reading scripts as they were coming out. So that's sort of really what we do. I get access to scripts, and then talk to Kirsten, who obviously is in the writer's room, and part of what she's doing is going, okay, what would be a great book that will really, for people who get the books, it will really enhance or enrich their enjoyment of season 3. And that's what we tried to do. That if you knew season 3, if you're just a viewer, you can watch season 3 and absolutely enjoy it. But if you're hardcore enough a fan that you'll go and pick up a novel and go, oh, it fills in that gap, then hopefully there'll be all sorts of little Easter eggs. You'll hear throwaway lines get picked up. They've got lines in season 3 about having adventures on Donatu and these kinds of things. And these are all fleshed out. So you take a single line and spin a whole chapter around it and that kind of thing. So that's sort of how the relationship works, I think. Works pretty well, I think.
Is there any is it reciprocal at all? Like if you get a script and you see a character moment, and are you able to say, oh, I love this moment, I'd love to write about this?
Well, what I do is I get access to the scripts. I come up with an outline, or the sort of ideas for an outline, and then I send that back, and then we really thrash it out together. And usually I'll be sort of picking up things. So things about the courier network, and the tunnels. I won't spoil too much about the plots, but these sort of tunnels are quite important in the story. There are lines in the script that I kind of go, I think I can do something with this. Run with that. That'll come in really, really helpful. Or there's probably, maybe we need to talk about the temporal wars, or maybe we need to talk about these. These are all things that we kind of thrash out. And if you're picking up a Star Trek book, chances are you're quite interested in Star Trek. Yeah, you're not a casual viewer. You've gone a little bit of an extra mile. So we like to sort of put this extra stuff in because, you know, we care too.
Yeah.
So
we're fans.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, and we want you to kind of go, yeah, I'm being rewarded for having watched Enterprise.
The Temporal Wars, it's such an interesting plot that yes, you kind of bring into the novel, and so many fans, myself included, we wanted to see some of that play out on screen. What would be the ramifications? But filling that in, especially with the one planet that we do visit in the novel that Burnham goes to, and she, I guess, I don't know if rescue is the right word to use, but she takes a mother and daughter from that planet, and they are dealing with that fallout of, you know, the Federation left us behind, Starfleet left us behind, and we don't want anything to do with them. We are an insular society. We are self-sustaining, and to see consequences of actions that our heroes may have taken hundreds of years prior really opens you up to the idea that, you know, for all the good that Starfleet did, you know, there's a lot of side consequences that can occur that you never think of. And picking up on those threads, that's the beauty of where I think certainly Wonderlands and many other novels come in. The Last Best Hope was another one of my favorites. So thank you. But demystifying the Romulans in that way and giving them a sense of society and a sense of culture. When your character work, when you're building out these stories and these characters, what's the secret sauce, Una?
I don't know. I think they just seem very real to me when I'm with them. They're just, you know, I try not to make people villainous. I think it's only Descartes that I really find villainous in Star Trek. And you just have to, you know, so, I mean, Maddox in Last Best Hope is not a very likable person. You know, right. He's really awful to Agnes. You know, he really destroys her life in many ways. So you have to find that person's truth. And you have to spend time just inhabiting the way they experience the world. And that's about a lot of writing is about sitting and thinking and feeling, and before you even put the words down. Wow. And the more time that you can just sort of inhabit this person's reality, the words then just come quite naturally, because they're just telling you how the world seems to them. So someone like Maddox is very interesting to write. A lot you can do through dialogue, but a lot of it you just have to spend time in people's heads, I think. So Maddox was particularly interesting. The Romulan scientist in that book who is just trying to keep his head down and delude himself. People who delude themselves are particularly interesting to write, because you're inhabiting a sort of denial of reality. You're inhabiting something that isn't true. And the whole world is, you know, you as the reader should be going, no, just wake up or pay attention or get your act together or whatever. But the character sometimes never does. So there's a little bit of that when you write Garak as well. You want him to kind of wake up a bit sooner.
Yes. I imagine there's myself, yourself, listeners included, would like to go and shake not just characters but actual people by the shoulders and just say, wake up.
Wake up.
Yeah, come on, do this.
Yeah, just go and get your vaccination.
We recently hosted Noah Ababak-Katz on the show, who said we're past the point of subtle conversation and we must now be in your face about it. And he's referencing Star Trek Next Generation, where when they would dance around the transgender issue with Jadzia Dax and Ezri, versus, you know, modern day where we're talking about blue and gray and how their dynamic really pays off for each other. The role of science fiction today, how do you feel enters into this new world where social and progressive ideas are happening faster than ever, faster than we can write them down even?
I guess, well, science fiction is notoriously bad at predicting the future. It's really terrible about it, and that's true. You look at those stacks of pads that they all have in Deep Space Nine. They really, really, really didn't understand the cloud. So, but what can science fiction do? I think it's just got to keep its heart. It's got to keep its optimism. It's got to keep the kind of science fiction that I like has got to be committed to being inclusive, being diverse, being truthful to itself, fessing up when it gets it wrong, or just keeping on trying to get it right, being open to listening. There are books that I've written that I would write completely differently now. I would just do different things entirely. Science fiction is, why do I love it? Because it can sort of show these pathways to how we can get from a bad place to a better place. I guess that's why I don't find dystopia too interesting. I like seeing the pathway out of it. I can turn on the news and see hellscapes, and I know how we get there. We get there through stupidity and selfishness and violence. But the pathway out is really what I think science fiction needs to be doing. It's not good enough just to plonk a utopia there. We've got to show the route to it and what we need to do to get there, or to lead the kind of life that means utopia. I don't know if that answers your question, but
I think that's a beautiful answer, and I think that's a wonderful cap. But before we close out, I do want to ask you if there's anything that you would like to share that maybe you haven't had an opportunity to touch upon, either today or yesterday or in the past or in the future.
Oh, you had one question, I think, that when you kindly sent me over some sort of things to discuss about. There's just one little thing, and I don't think I've mentioned it in any interviews at all. It's very, very small, but I thought I may as well put it here because I've not mentioned it. I think you were asking about things from drafts that hadn't got in.
Yes.
And there weren't really many drafts because I write very quickly. I do all that thinking, and then I put it down on the page. But originally, my original idea for this, and we kind of go, what are we going to do with this? Was I was going to base it on the Canterbury Tales and make it sort of feel sort of weirdly medieval and that sort of thing. And that kind of got lost as I realised that Alice in Wonderland really was the touchstone book. There was a much better one. But that was sort of my first thought. And maybe I'll come back to that one day as a really neat idea for a science fiction book. But that was then. I don't think I mentioned that to anyone else. So I thought I'd chuck that one.
Yeah. Hey, I'd be down for checking that out too.
Yeah.
Una, thank you so much for your time today and for hanging on and waiting for me to finish up with all my other stuff.
No worries at all. Absolutely fine. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Star Trek Discovery Wonderlands really details Michael's journey through the 32nd century as she navigates what it means to live without the Federation. Una McCormack expands on the story of the Courier Network and their role in this new galaxy and shows the connection and progression of Burnham and Book's relationship in a very real fashion. Cleveland Booker gets a chance to showcase his complex moral views on doing the right thing in a universe full of harsh realities. Fan favorite Aditya Sahil becomes more than a Federation flag bearer as his character becomes the sort of stoic optimist that Burnham so desperately needs. What I found interesting in the novel is that Michael is torn between Book, who's gently supporting Michael and working to convince her that Starfleet is kind of a lost cause, and to spend all this time and effort and energy on something that's gone when she should just move forward, right? And Sahil, who's like a lighthouse keeper, calling Michael home, telling her, listen, I thought the Starfleet and the Federation was gone, and yet here you are. And it's that duality of her character introduced again, where she must struggle with what the right path may be. new characters are introduced, and we're invited to take a look at what Starfleet has left behind. Not only a torn legacy, but also derelict starships and lost starbases. Needless to say, I highly recommend this book. It was such a wonderful conversation. Please do check out Una McCormack's Twitter feed, @Una McCormack, and her website, www.unamccormack.co.uk, for updates on current and future projects. And as always, you guys can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram @StarfleetPod for updates on episodes, interact directly with us, ask questions, or, hey, call us out. Please stay tuned to hear what else is available on the We Made This network. Thanks, everybody.
Elsewhere on We Made This.
Pick a disc.
Imagine if George R.R. Martin had a mental breakdown, decided that his main mode of transport was talking to him and telling him to kill people, and he somehow managed to find a way into Game of Thrones, and he was told to kill Sansa Stark because she reminded him of an ex-girlfriend. That's technically what the plot of this album is. An analogue to.
Yeah, you kind of nailed it. Yeah.
So,
right in the childhood.
Normally, we take it in turns. I pick a show that you've never heard of. You pick a show that I've never heard of.
Yeah.
And we flip it and we flip it and we flip it. But we're doing Mad Mutant Month. This was your idea.
Yeah,
Tell everyone about Mad Mutant Month.
Well, because the vaccines turned us all into mad mutants.
Really?
No, we were looking for shows that has sort of like spanned through generations of childhood, whether that's through reboots or whether from like, we were looking for, shows that sort of like managed to span through Gen X, Millennial to Gen Z. And one of the ones that has done that through both reboots and reruns is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles.
Cerebral Jukebox.
The whole premise of the song is young, lads going off to get blown to bits for no real reason other than they were sent there by a magistrate or needed the money. It's a real stark contrast, the whole series and this song about patriotism, duty, and the sort of horrors of it as well, that you'll probably die. Because in the Napoleonic Wars and the sort of preceding wars, these were like teenagers getting sent to countries that they'd not even read about in books because they couldn't read to get blown to bits.
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network.